Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar today. Super excited to be chatting with you all about AI search visibility, generative engine optimization, and how to future-proof your brand's digital presence for this growing AI world. I know it's a hot topic that a lot of people will have concerns about and questions about, so excited to be chatting with you all today. Just a quick kind of couple housekeeping things as people continue to trickle in. So my name is Jenny Russ. I'm a client solutions manager at Nexus Marketing. We are a digital marketing agency based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and we specialize in demand generation and inbound lead generation for businesses that are selling into specific mission-driven industries. So typically we are working with organizations that are either software or service providers that are then selling to nonprofits, healthcare organizations, educational institutions, associations, those types of orgs, and helping our clients get in front of their intended audiences online via kind of various digital channels. So super excited to be chatting with you all today. I think we probably have some people on the call who are already familiar with Nexus, probably some where this is maybe your first interaction with us. So welcome either way. All right. Oh, one last housekeeping item. We do have a member of our team in the chat under Nexus Marketing. If you have any troubleshooting issues that you need help with, please feel free to message them or leave a note in the chat. They can ideally help you troubleshoot. And then we've also got both the questions function on the bottom right-hand side, as well as the chat. If you've got questions throughout, feel free to leave them in either one, or of course, feel free to use the chat to leave comments or thoughts as well. And hopefully we will have some good time at the end to get to questions and some discussion. All right, it is 2:02, so I think let's go ahead and get started. Before I dive into the actual content, what I would love is to get a sense of the group in the room. Where are we, right, in the GEO journey? Like, who is kind of where in various areas? So I'll give a second for some polls to come through. Excited to see, okay, lots of people who haven't really started. Okay, I'm seeing some of that. A couple of already implementing. Great. Okay, honestly, it looks like we've got kind of a mix across the boards, which is great. Super interesting to see there. All right. So first thing I want to do here when we're talking about AI search is just, demystify it a little bit and talk about what it is, how it works, all of those good things. So first of all, with traditional search, really the foundation of traditional search is crawling and indexing your pages. And basically, right, your pages get crawled and rendered and then indexed. Indexed pages are then able to rank. Ranking pages typically then, right, will convert some number of searchers. And so in traditional search, pages that fail in that early part of that like crawl index zone will fail and won't convert. And that's actually pretty much the same for GEO as well. That like crawling and indexing piece is the foundation of GEO as well as your traditional SEO. Oh, interesting. I've got some icons here that haven't translated well in my PDF, but that's okay. That won't change the content of the slide. So anyways, just for those of you who may not know, the way that AI search typically works is they rely on LLMs, large language models, and historically those models are pre-trained on static content. So they, you ask a question, they go into their existing database of information that it has been trained on. We'll use that to form an answer, and that answer typically, right, is somewhat limited because the tool only has the information that it has been trained on previously. Where this has changed over the last, couple of years as these tools have gotten more advanced is there's now this process called retrieval augmented generation. It's RAG for short, where basically what happens is you ask a question, it'll take that query, it'll bounce it to Bing. It will pull fresh content from Bing to talk, like, what's the word I'm going for? To beef up the answer that you're already getting. And it will combine the information it already has with the information it pulls from Bing and give you an augmented answer. So again, this idea that like your website has to be discoverable by traditional search tools, still super valid for this retrieval augmented generation process. You need to make sure that your content can be found by Bing in particular, but in general, all search engines, that's really valuable. Again, I mentioned that, today Bing is really at the center of all of these tools. That is generally what these different AI generative tools, it's kind of a mouthful, is using to retrieve information. And so, as I mentioned, if your pages can't be crawled and indexed by Bing, they can't be, crawled and understood and used in generative AI results. So it's really, really important. And that's, kind of an overview of how some of that works. The other thing that I think it's really important for us to talk about and be aware of is there's been a massive increase in ChatGPT users over the last 2.5 years. So I've got some data here. I confirmed this morning, looked it up to make sure that this is up-to-date info. So a couple of interesting data points here. I think, as we can see, earlier this year, there was a huge increase in users in kind of the early spring of this year. The weekly users have been holding roughly steady around 800 million for the last couple of months. But all of the articles I've seen have said that ChatGPT is on track to hit 1 billion users by the end of 2025. This data certainly seems to suggest that we're on that path. So again, I think it just speaks to this idea that if you're not thinking about how your brand is understood and cited by AI tools, you are going to get left behind, because increasingly people are using these tools in all areas of their life. So next piece that I want to talk about here before we get into actual like GEO AI visibility strategy is understanding how your brand currently performs from an AI visibility perspective. There are a couple of ways to do this. I won't go into a huge amount of detail just because I think, I can't get too into the weeds, but one is to track referral traffic directly from AI tools. So I've got, kind of what I think is the easiest way to do this outlined here. Again, I can't pull up like our clients' Google Analytics to show you what this looks like in practice. So happy to share some additional resources after the webinar if you'd like some help on, how to actually find this data in your own Google Analytics. But basically, you'll go into your Google Analytics, you'll go into acquisition and into traffic acquisition. I will typically then add a comparison and only look at referral and affiliates traffic. And then you can filter for session source / medium. And you should be able to see, typically you'll see like a ChatGPT one. You can look up some of these other AI tools, although I do think ChatGPT is, kind of the widest adopted platform so far. So there are a couple, there are a bunch of different ways that you can track AI traffic in Google Analytics. This is what I think is the easiest, but there are a bunch of different reports you can set up, and there are, a couple of different ways you can navigate this. And again, happy to provide some additional resources after the webinar if anyone would want those and find those valuable. The next piece here is to actually use AI tools themselves to assess visibility. It's a little hard to see with these screenshots, but basically what I did is I went into my own ChatGPT and I decided to use an example from the education space. And I basically said, forget everything you already know about me. What are 20 middle and bottom of the funnel consumer questions that someone looking for a student information system provider might ask ChatGPT, and what brands would ChatGPT reference for each question. You could, repeat this across a bunch of different product categories. I chose student information systems because that just felt like a pretty straightforward example from one of our core verticals. But of course, you could do this for a healthcare software. You could do this for different consulting categories, all these things, and get a sense of, right, like, what are some of these questions and what brands are being cited. In this case, you can see that like Power School is being cited for a bunch. Infinite Campus is being cited for some, but not all. And I think this one gives you a sense of like, is your brand being mentioned at all, period? I think that's question number one. And then also, maybe if you're showing up for some and not others, getting a sense of how is my brand being perceived, right? So for example, Power School here is getting cited for a bunch of these around like best student information systems for K-12. But when, for this question here, kind of on the bottom right, it's which student information system is best for small private schools or charter schools, it's not getting cited. So maybe that's an opportunity to say, oh, I'm not getting associated with this one kind of core piece of my audience. And I can create, I need to create some content and some brand authority around, that specific piece. So again, I think these AI tools, they can serve as tools themselves to understand your AI search visibility. You can also just go in and start asking a bunch of these questions, questions you're getting at conferences, questions you're seeing online, whether that's, on your own social media or in community forums, or questions your sales team maybe is getting as part of the sales process. Those are all things that you can plug into AI tools like you are a prospective buyer and see what they're spitting out, see what they are, what brands they're referencing, and start to get a sense a little, this is fairly anecdotal, but start to get a sense, right, of if your brand is being appropriately cited for the things that you would want it to be. All right, so now we're at building your strategy. And I would say, from my perspective, there are three fundamental elements of a good GEO strategy. The first is technical considerations. There are a bunch of technical elements that impact how your website is being crawled, indexed by some of these search tools like Bing that are then impacting how it's being understood by AI tools. And that's really, I think, the core question is, are you utilizing the structural and technical elements of your website to make sure that AI tools understand your content to the best, to your best ability? The next piece here is brand consistency. So thinking through, are you using clear and consistent brand messaging and language across all of your content, whether that's on your website or off your website? So thinking through your social media, when your team is going on podcasts or doing webinars or writing articles for publications, or when you're getting cited on top providers lists and things like that, are you, is your brand being cited with that consistent brand language is really important. Because again, with traditional SEO, like we're focused primarily on individual pages that are being optimized, and then that page as a whole is going to be ranked for a keyword. But for GEO, they're pulling, data and information about your brand from anywhere and everywhere. So it's really important to make sure that you've got that really clear, consistent messaging, so that AI tools are not going to be confused about what your company does, what your core products are, who your audience is, all of those really important things. And this last piece is around brand authority. I think the $1 million, it's like, why should anyone read your content? Why should anyone trust what you have to say? Why should AI tools, you utilize and share your brand and your content versus others? And so there's this authority and credibility piece. So are you emphasizing your brand or your team's expertise, experience, and impact? It's really, really important. So couple of kind of core best practices here that I think would be really beneficial for us to talk about. And I'll talk about the technical kind of side of it first, and then I'll move into some content suggestions as well. This first one is utilizing schema markup. Schema markup is not something I was familiar with before starting work at a digital agency. So, not sure how widely known this is across marketing roles, but schema markup is basically a type of structured data where you can, inform search engine and AI tools, kind of all the bots that are crawling your website, what kind of content each page is, so that it can really quickly understand, classify, and then, surface your content for relevant queries. Schema markup is super, super valuable, especially for GEO. It's valuable for SEO as well, but GEO, it is really, really crucial. And I think it's a piece that a lot of people, if they don't necessarily have a lot of technical expertise, wouldn't necessarily know how to implement, even though it's actually not that challenging once you know how to do it. But, not something that I think is as widely understood as some of these other elements. So would really highly recommend thinking about schema markup if that's not something you've utilized for your website before. This next piece here, leveraging metadata effectively. Now, this again is a super standard SEO best practice, but it holds for GEO as well. You want to make sure that all of these bots, whether it's from ChatGPT, whether it's from Google, whatever, you want to make sure that they can understand what your content is about, understand what kind of topics it's relevant to, and then present it accurately. And a key piece of that is using really clear, ideally keyword-rich metadata to help them understand that process. It's the same for SEO as it is for GEO, but really, really important. And again, something that I think is more widely known than schema markup, but not always effectively or consistently implemented is what we found, especially with clients that start out with us. This next piece is integrating multimedia. So images, videos, infographics can be really, really valuable for GEO, and making sure those are integrated effectively into your content, whether that's, across social media, super valuable, integrated into your website, particularly valuable. There's even a specific schema markup that you can attach to videos, for example. So integrating multimedia is a great way to improve your overall AI visibility. And then optimizing for mobile as well. So AI tools like Google typically prefer fast loading, user-friendly pages. Mobile responsiveness is particularly highlighted, I think, for, in conversations that I've had with clients. Sometimes that mobile piece can be a little bit of a question, because it's like, well, we're working B2B. Our clients are not navigating to our websites on their phone. They're typically using desktop. So why do I need to worry about mobile optimization? Well, in the grand scheme of things, most people who are using generative AI tools and traditional search tools are using on mobile. And so that's what those tools favor. So I would really recommend optimizing your core web vitals, particularly for mobile responsiveness, because that's really going to help your overall visibility for, again, both traditional search engines and generative search engines as well. That best practice holds across both types of optimization. All right, moving on to content. Bunch of different best practices here, some of which I've touched on already. So the first one is maintaining consistency, which I talked about. So making sure that your brand name and messaging is used consistently across your website, your social profiles, your external references. I think this is, particularly important, around like team transitions. I think what we've seen is that organizations that haven't necessarily had like a very clear and consistent brand guidelines across team transitions or like brand refreshes, and they haven't gone back and updated all of those old, that old language, old pages, old collateral. You can get kind of a messy roadmap of different brand language over the course of many years. And it's really important to have that consistency across platforms. So I'd really highly recommend, if you know, right, that you've had multiple different team members managing marketing over the last 5 years, if you've had, a website relaunch or a brand refresh in the last 5-10 years, would really highly recommend taking a look and trying to get a sense of, are there older elements of our branding that are sticking around that might be inconsistent with how we're positioning the brand now, and obviously going in and fixing that. This next one is publishing thought leadership. So publishing original expert-driven content. So there are a bunch of different options here: white papers, blog articles, data analysis, to really make sure that you are being viewed as and are acting as an authority and a thought leader in your space on the core topics that you want to be known for. This goes kind of hand in hand with offsite references. So again, with traditional SEO, building backlinks from credible offsite sources is hugely valuable for ranking factors. It is, that direct backlink authority is less important for GEO. But the principle of the thing is almost more important for GEO, this idea that you are active in your industry, that you are being cited and referenced by other companies or publications in the space, establishes you as a trusted, authoritative voice. And that is going to be really beneficial in terms of making sure that you and your brand are being cited on generative AI tools. So those two kind of go hand in hand, but very important to be publishing thought leadership both on your own site and with partners in other publications, all those things. This next piece here is using conversational language. So making sure that your content is emulating how people actually are using these search tools. And so, for example, right, going back to what I had put in around student information systems. Like, people are not typically going to be just putting student information system into ChatGPT the way that they would into Google. They are going to be phrasing it, what are the best student information systems for X segment of their audience, or right, whatever that ends up looking like. So wanting to make sure that your content is written in a way that is aligned with actually how people are phrasing those types of questions and queries, really, really valuable. And that typically takes a much more conversational tone. So wanted to highlight that there. A couple of other recommendations here. Author expertise, super important. So again, you want to establish your brand as a relevant thought leader and a credible source of information. You want your authors to do that as well. So when you're publishing, say, blogs on your article, instead of having the author be just like brand team or not have one at all, have a specific team member listed as, the author for that content. When you click on that name, have, a bio come up that has a photo and information about their history, their education. Maybe it has their LinkedIn page linked if they've published on other publications or spoken on podcasts or conferences, things like that. Really establishing the credentials of your authorship is, again, going to help establish that overall authority and kind of that overall perception of how credible your brand is. Another one here is highlighting impact. So client case studies are a great way to establish your brand's work, your brand's impact, showcase those measurable results, which is really valuable. It's actually interesting. I was working with a prospective client in the nonprofit, like, technology consulting space recently, and we were trying to evaluate what their AI visibility looked like. And so I was doing a little digging, and looked up basically, had ChatGPT asked it for the top 5 like nonprofit technology consulting firms in the United States, gave me the top 5. As part of that list, it gave me, a 1-sentence summary of each organization, couple of their key services, and a couple of their top clients that, were clearly getting pulled from case studies, from testimonials, things like that. So really valuable there. And again, another great way to establish your brand's authority in the space. Focusing on diverse user intent, I think, is really exciting. It's a cool opportunity to think through the ways that organizations and individuals are using your tools. So thinking through how that can, impact content. People might be wanting to compare tools and looking for more comprehensive answers on weighing the benefits of certain tools. That's great content you can put on your site. And again, thinking just in general, there are a million different ways to implement this, but thinking through, the more diverse user intent of generative AI tools and thinking through how your content can meet more of those different user intents, because people are using it a little differently, obviously, than Google, because it has different capabilities. And then last one here is incorporating credible data. Goes back to this idea of like trustworthiness and authority for your brand. So how can you incorporate statistics, facts, data from credible sources in your industry into your content that aren't necessarily just from you? Again, it's going to increase content visibility. Those types of statistics love to get cited in ChatGPT and other generative AI tools. So I think it's a really valuable opportunity to think through how you're enhancing your content, and a really easy one to go back and say, maybe you've got existing blog articles. You can go back and say, where are there opportunities for me to back up some of these opinions that I'm sharing, or some of these best practices that I'm sharing, with some, like established credible facts from other sources in the industry. So, I know we've only got a few minutes. I will quickly just run through the way that we approach GEO with our clients. So basically what we have done is we've created a proprietary scorecard for a couple of different items, both your brand and your author. And we'll go through and score all of our clients on like 60 plus individual factors that impact GEO. And then we'll create a task list of all the things that we think will improve your AI visibility, and start implementing those. Whether or not that's something that you want to bring an external party on to help with, I would really highly recommend trying to figure out like what are the actionable items that you need to take to make, real improvements. I think it's easy to say, well, we need to have consistent brand language across our different platforms. What does that actually look like in practice? And how do you actually implement that across multiple teams? If you've got multiple teams impacting your marketing, something to think about. So again, whether that's with the assistance of an agency like Nexus or independently, I think it's really important to actually create some like really tangible action items so that this doesn't feel like another like nebulous thing that you're trying to figure out how to implement. So I'm about to pause and take some questions, but I would love to get a sense from the group. If you're still here, thank you. I really appreciate it. I will publish a poll now. Let me get that out on what kinds of resources would be valuable. I'm happy to share some of these following the webinar. Our team is also always looking for feedback on the types of resources that our team can be providing via our website, via our newsletter, via our own social media. So would love to get a sense of what y'all are looking for, and I'm happy to follow up with some of these after the event. So if there's anything specific, more specific than this maybe, feel free to leave that in the chat. And I'm happy to follow up with you individually, and help you identify some resources there. All right. Would love to pause here for questions. I know we covered a lot and we are just about at time. I will stay over for a few minutes to answer questions if anybody has some. You are welcome to leave them in the questions feature. So I will give everyone a moment. Oh, okay, I'm seeing a couple come through. Okay, interesting. I've got one here on implementing schema markup. Basically, like, how technical is implementing schema markup, and is that something that you need a web developer to do? It's a great question. I think, and the annoying answer is it depends, but I think really what it depends on is your own team's kind of impact onto the back end of the website. For some organizations that we work with, if they're, for example, like if their software product is built into the back end of the website, sometimes that means that the marketing team does not necessarily have a lot of leeway to go in and make some of these technical changes, and they have to tap in their dev team in order to do that. But I would say overall, if you've got like back end access and kind of the permission and leeway from your leadership to go and make those changes, it is not overly technical. It is something that, my belief is that anyone can go and learn how to do it. It is relatively, it does involve a little bit of coding. I know that sounds really scary, but there are a bunch of really great resources online to learn how to implement that. We've had a lot of success with that across our team, which, our team is generally not like trained software developers. We've had a lot of great success. So great question. And I think that's the only one we've got. I appreciate everyone joining me today. Okay, I see some more people looking for resources. Great. I will be happy to share a number of these after the webinar. And then, by the way, if you're interested in a copy of the recording, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to send the recording as well as the slides for your reference. My email is Jenny, that's JENNY, .russ@nexusmarketing.com. It's there. So again, if the recording would be valuable, happy to share it. And I appreciate y'all's time today. All right, unless there are any questions, I will go ahead and let y'all go. Very much appreciate the time, and hope y'all have a great rest of your Wednesday.